Hey, Audio Road listener, what is your profit per mile? How about your cost per mile? Or even your bottom line? Stop driving blind and know your numbers. Profit Gauges is absolutely simple bookkeeping specifically for owner-operators. Have instant access to business and tax reports that will help you increase your profits and keep your money in your pocket where it belongs. Sign up for Profit Gauges today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial. Know your numbers and master the journey. Visit our website at letstruck.com or call our Tribe Care Team at 855-800-FUEL. That's 855-800-3835.
Your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rufford. It is Tuesday, October 29th. We are here live. It's time for the Power Hour. I have the team here from Pittsburgh Power, so we're going to bring in the team, hear from them, and then we will get to your calls and questions. So line them up. Phone lines are open, 855-950-3835, or hit that call now button on your app. We will take your calls and answer your questions about everything maintenance. So jump in and join us, and we will get to those calls here in just a little bit. Looks like the whole team is here, so we're just going to bring everybody in at the same time, and we'll just talk over each other. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Kevin.
Eric, Leroy. Anybody there?
Nope, not bad.
There you go.
Sorry, Kevin.
There we go.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Is Leroy here?
He is. He's just getting mic'd up right now.
Got it. So we have the whole team here right off the bat. This hasn't happened for me in a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Bruce, what's on your mind? We'll start with you.
Well, you mentioned that video of me being under the hood of that Columbia.
We found it, and I put
and
it
that
up.
surfaced.
Yeah.
So I think it was Derek Pickles sent it to me, and I sent it to some friends, and so
yeah, that's a good.
Well, it's amazing how much younger I looked then. The last 10 years have been tough.
Yeah, yeah. There was an article that was going around a couple weeks ago, and I just saw this headline over and over and over. Somebody came up with, and I didn't even read the article because it wouldn't matter anyway, but somebody came up with this, and it kept saying the article, the headline was that we rapidly age during our 40s and our 60s. They came up with some reason why, and they said we do a lot of aging during our 40s and then again during our 60s.
So when I was turning 60, I was on the phone with an owner-operator that was 74, and I said to him, there's a big difference in my body between 50 and 60. And he paused. And he said, where do you see the difference between 60 and 70?
Yeah, there
I said, is it that bad? Yeah. He said, it's that bad. So now I'm approaching 80. So yeah. I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So being you brought this up, the stem cells actually help us rebuild our organs and our body and our skin and everything.
They do. There's still just, it's fairly new. There's a lot of stuff going on, and every time you have that, you're going to have a lot of wild claims. I've heard claims that stem cells will fix everything, and then I've had some people say it really didn't help them. So it's still kind of all across the board. Do you understand what most people don't realize, what stem cells are, why they're different?
I'll let you go.
Okay. So every cell in our body has like a program or a set of instructions on what it's going to do. It is going to develop this way, or this cell is going to become a cell of your tooth, or whatever. That's all kind of pre-programmed. Stem cells, though, for whatever reason, they can become almost anything. So they're really like versatile cells that the body could use to rebuild almost anything. Whereas a specific cell is usually programmed to do a specific thing. That's what differentiates stem cells. And babies have a lot of stem cells because they're going to be doing a lot of building and growing. So they're kind of like generic building blocks we can use to rebuild or fix almost anything. That's kind of like the simplified version of what stem cells are. So one of the really interesting things that just happened, now it happened in China, so it's hard to trust everything that happened, but type 1 diabetes is a really nasty disease, because type 1s usually, it takes about 20 years off somebody's life or more. I had a nephew that was type 1, developed it really young when he was like 4 or 5. And only lived into his 40s. And that's not unusual. It's a really tough disease. And unlike type 2, we can cure type 2 all day long. We do that every day. Type 1, the pancreas itself, the beta cells have been damaged so that the body can't produce insulin. And there's a huge difference between type 1 and type 2. It's almost like two totally different diseases. But China just claimed within the last month that they used stem cells to rebuild somebody's pancreas and cured type 1 diabetes. Now, that's a big deal. If that turns out to be true, that is a really big deal.
I'll say, what they're saying is, around age 30, we go into half production of stem cells, and by age 60, we're hardly producing any stem cells.
Right.
And
right.
Hopefully my patches are allowing me to rebuild stem cells, because I was told years ago that about every 7 years you get new organs, and about every 24 to 25 you get a new heart, because the body keeps rebuilding itself. So hopefully these stem cells are going to give me another good 10 or 20 years.
That's an interesting concept. And we know that given the right conditions, the human body should live to 100 virtually all the time. That should not be that difficult for humans to live to be 100. There was a time where more people lived to 100 than we do now. There were some Indian tribes in the desert Southwest. It was really common for them. If they weren't killed in an accident or something like that, they were probably going to live to 100. And they didn't see all the degenerative diseases we see today. And one of the really cool things, there's a list somewhere. I should get this because it's crazy. It starts with all the cells in your body, different organs, like your stomach lining. You have a new stomach lining like every 7 days or something. It's really fast. Some cells are rebuilding constantly. Wow. And there's a whole schedule, and they go through what you just said. These cells are replaced, every this many years or months or days. Our entire body is constantly rebuilding itself. So if we provide it with the right nutrition and the right environment, then we would be really healthy for a really long time. And the advantage we have today, we have one big advantage today, is that we have access to really good nutrition all the time if we choose to. Whereas hunter-gatherers, they might go, days or weeks without eating. They weren't always getting the nutrition they needed, and yet they'd still live, much, much longer than people thought they did. Today, we have access. We could eat the perfect human diet every day if we chose to. We should never have a nutritional deficiency. The downside to what we've done is we really have polluted our planet in so many ways, and it's a pretty toxic place these days. It's not going to end. I'm not worried about, the climate collapse or anything like that. But our world is really not very clean in most places anymore. And people have microplastics in their
Right.
body and forever chemicals, and it's almost impossible to get away from that.
Correct. Okay. Well, I don't have anything truck related. I'm
right.
going back through my notes and see what some of my calls were, but I know Eric has some interesting things going on in the shop.
All right. We'll go to Eric then. Leroy might still be getting his mic on, so we'll give him a little more time. Eric, go ahead.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Good morning. What's on your mind today?
Oh, we got a bunch of stuff in the shop going on again. We have a big cam. We just finished up, dynoed pretty decent this morning. It's an 88 Mac Superliner, kind of a cool old truck.
Yeah, it is.
We an 88 Peterbilt in here right now. We're finishing up a mechanical N14. Another neat one you get to look at. And the one I did want to focus on was a guy named Rick Hambley. Rick's been a customer of ours for quite a few years now. He's a religious catalyst user in his 2021 Peterbilt 579 with the Cummins X. I guess it would still be, that would be an X15 2021. But this truck is meticulous. Everything inside and out of it is black. It's shiny. It's got some chrome on it. Just a gorgeous looking truck. He happened to email me a couple months ago now as preventive maintenance, and something I wanted to focus on a little bit this morning. A lot of people forget preventive maintenance. A lot of guys just want to fix it when stuff breaks. This guy is the opposite. He's got 500,000 miles on this truck. Last year, right around this time, actually, we did a diesel force cleaning and a DPF alternative cleaning on his truck. Went through everything as far as like a yearly inspection, stuff to go through, everything for maintenance. What we also did with his, though, is we took the EGR system off and sent it across the street to our DPF alternatives. And we did a sonic cleaning of all the piping, all the air piping that has carbon gases going through it, exhaust gases. We were able to make it look brand new. I was going through the old work order this morning and looking at some photos we attached to the guy's work order, and it was amazing. Like the guys in the back painted it, all the pieces, like the new Cummins red, and the interior was absolutely spotless. It was like a brand new piece we pulled right off the shelf. So these are some of the things we offer that people don't know or just don't realize. Rick's list, though, for this time, 500,000 mile. In his email, he wrote 500,000 miles / end of warranty inspection and PM service. We're changing the engine oil, the transmission oil, the differential oils. We're changing all the fuel filters, of course, grease the truck. We're replacing the crankshaft dampener. We're going to run the overhead, boost test and check for codes. Leroy is going to pull the ECM report and look for any kind of like traction control issues or lights or any kind of ongoing things. We're checking the air conditioner, the system, the pressure, and the Freon. Replacing the DEF fluid filter. We're going to replace the cab shocks, the chassis shocks. We're going to send the drive shafts out, change the oil in the hubs, test and replace the batteries, replace the tractor pigtail, belts, hose.
Uh-oh. I'm probably, yep, I just lost Mike again. All right. I actually, I have an appointment tomorrow. I can't do it today because of the CMC. I do have an appointment tomorrow with,
Ready to connect. Click connect to show now. You are connected as the host. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-in Studio web interface. Audio recording is on.
Like an absolute brand new showroom piece. It's a beautiful truck, but a lot of people may think, hey, let's do some maintenance on the truck, change the dampener, maybe change the fluids, filters, but also look at the shocks. Look at the drive shaft. Maybe do you notice any vibration like that? There's a lot of stuff going on that a lot of people miss.
I dropped out there for a second. I've been having internet issues for the last 2 weeks. I actually have an appointment tomorrow with my company that provides a piece of my internet equipment. I think we're going to try to tune it up and figure out what's been going on with it. Um, what you talk, I mean, that's an incredible list. There's no doubt. When you take care of a truck like that, that truck will virtually last forever. Um,
Yeah.
the first time I bought a European car, a BMW, and I bought a really cheap older one the first time, really liked the simplicity of it, the quality of it. And it just felt different to me. And then when I went through their recommended maintenance, and sometimes you see these cars with 300,000 miles on them. People keep them forever. They're still running really well. They're not all tore up. Um, but there's a cost to that too. I was shocked the first time I found out what the cost of an A and B service was on some of these European cars. I'm thinking
Yeah.
this is like an oil change kind of thing, couple $100. Oh no, it's like $2,200 for one of the services, and 1,300 for the other one. They alternate. If you did it every time, your car probably would last almost forever. But at some point, you've almost bought another car with all the service costs too. So,
Yeah.
and that's just because their rates were so outrageous on that stuff. But there really is something to that. You can keep a vehicle running a really long time if you take care of it like this.
And this is a very detailed list that a lot of things on Rick's list people overlook. Changing the power steering fluid, replacing the tractor pigtail, things that you just take for granted every day. You just wait until they break and then, oh yeah, I got to change this, or there's
Yeah.
some corrosion in there. I need to take care of this. Do it now. That way you can stay on the road, be reliable, be dependable. Because the way the rates are right now, the way the economy is right now, you need to take advantage of every single thing you can do to be reliable and dependable to your carrier. You
Yeah.
don't want to lose any
Yeah.
contracts. I've talked to a lot of people recently that, hey, I bought this new truck or I bought an old truck and it's been having some issues. And now my carrier's kind of looking at me, with an eyebrow
Or your
raised, like,
customers.
are you going to be able to make it?
Yeah.
And it creates doubt. And that's what we don't
Uh,
want. We want reliable and dependable trucks is what we want. And that's our whole focus here is to keep you guys on the road, reliable and dependable. Because let's face it, if you guys aren't on the road, we aren't doing the show. But
yeah.
it's not going to happen. Truckers are our livelihood too. It's not just a commodity or good service. It's the whole industry in general.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Now, I like to find the balance here too, because I talk about being really efficient, keeping your costs down. There's a bell curve for maintenance if we're looking at cost effective. Now, we could say the way he's doing this, other than cost, there's no downside to this whatsoever. If you're willing to spend the cost, there are advantages to this. You will probably almost never see downtime. I get it. Then I try to find where is the sweet spot on that bell curve. If I see somebody spending too little on maintenance per mile, I mention it. Because in my mind, if you're spending too little just across the board every month, you're not doing the scheduled maintenance, the preventative maintenance you should be doing. I can tell by their cost. On the other hand, if their cost gets too high, what went wrong? Was it that you weren't taking care of the truck and now it's all showing up? Or are you just maybe overdoing this and spending too much money? I went through, we tried to develop a program. I was a helicopter mechanic in the Army, and you don't let any break on a helicopter. I mean, that's just out of the question. You can't let things break. You have to do such good preventative maintenance on an aircraft that it's not going to fall out of the sky. So there were schedules where you would replace things when they got to like 80 to 90% of their half-life. And that was based on years and years of experience. This part will wear out this many hours. We're going to replace it before we get there. And we tried to develop a program like that for trucks. And it was a good idea. The problem was the cost was always too much. that you were spending more than you needed to if you were trying to replace every part at those schedules. Yeah, and it in fact, after I kind of played around with it and couldn't get it to work, ATBS, who I sold my accounting company to, they did put together a formal program and had a cost to it. You paid a monthly fee, and all of this stuff got handled and taken care of. You just couldn't make it cost effective, though.
Yeah, there is a fine line, I'm the same way. Is it justifiable? What are your reasons for doing this?
Right.
Some guys like myself, I do it for peace of mind.
And
and I'm going to use
there's something to
insurance.
that, right? Right.
Yeah, I use my insurance as an example. My brother-in-law has a very successful insurance company out in Eastern PA, and I have everything bundled through him. My car, my life insurance, home, everything is bundled through him.
Which is a good idea.
I know I'm probably paying maybe a little bit more for the. I've never shopped them. It just I went to him and said, here's what I have. My wife, my children. Give me good coverage. And he went through everything. I know in the back of my mind, if I shopped and spent time, I could probably save a buck or two here or there. To me, it's not worth it. My
Right.
peace of mind
Yep.
knowing that my life and livelihood and my family are protected is worth a good night's sleep. So I'm willing to pay a little bit more for the extra service that I get because I know deep down in his mind, he's got my best interest at heart. So I'm
Exactly.
paying. Sometimes I
Well,
use the term, and he doesn't like this very much, is insurance is nothing more than organized mafia.
yeah, it kind of is.
Because they protect, I pay them to protect me. And
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking, it is kind
Yeah.
of true, but they get a little offensive to that
Right.
terminology.
Right.
Just a heads up.
Well, insurance salesmen are a little touchy anyway, so.
Yeah, so are car salesmen. Man,
That's
them
right.
guys are the worst.
Yeah, that's right. I have a nephew
But yeah,
who has been a car salesman all his life. Bruce, he sells new Audis now. Just a fantastic. He's one of those guys that just builds relationships, and people come back to him for decades, car after car after car. He's done an amazing job.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's he located?
Ravenna, Ohio.
Oh,
You're
okay.
familiar with that, right?
That's where I put the Isuzu diesel
That's right.
engine in my Chevy Suburban was in Ravenna.
That's right.
First restaurant I ever saw with deep fried green pepper rings, and oh, were they good?
That would have. Oh, I can't remember the name of the restaurant. It's not there anymore. And it was there for decades. East something.
Hmm.
East.
And it was,
I can't remember the name.
and
of it.
wasn't East Trailers right down the street from East Trailers?
Yes. Yep. East Trailers is there in
Mhm.
Ravenna. Yeah. I was.
Mhm.
My son was born in the hospital in Ravenna. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, most of my family still lives right there in that area. Pretty close, anyway. Hey,
Yep.
Bruce, I just wanted to share one of the comments about that video. Matthew
Yeah.
just posted a comment. It said, Bruce is so young here. I just had chicken wings in his honor, loaded in butter and smothered in avocado oil mayo, and I'll take a shot of max mileage right after to his health.
And who said that?
That was Matthew.
Who did that?
I
Okay.
thought that was a good comment.
What year was it? That wasn't all that long ago, was it?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm thinking this is like 08, 09 kind of era when we were still, we hadn't.
That's not that long ago.
Well, Bruce, it is. I mean, I know it doesn't, as we get old, to me anymore, when I think of, 20 years ago, sometimes I think it was the early 90s. No, it's not. The early 90s were a long time ago. I was shocked that we had, this kind of stuff. We had CMC footage from way back then. And do you believe that the CMC this year in Louisville will be our 20th anniversary?
That's awesome.
We did the first CMC.
So the one I was at, my
2005.
first one that was in Ohio, when you spoke by yourself, what year was that?
So I started in 2005 was the first one, and that's when I lived in Orlando. And I didn't know 05 and 06. Back then, I did one every month. The first year and a half of that program, 05 and then finishing up in 06, I did one every month somewhere different around the country. By myself, it was 25 people in a hotel room. I carried all the books in. I did everything. I mean, I didn't even have anybody there to help me. That's how it got started.
Yeah.
Then when Lisa got involved, which would have been around, I think in the middle of 08, we started to grow the program. And she asked me, why are you just doing it for 25 people every month? And I said, well, I don't know. Seems like a good idea. It's a nice small group and I can help everybody. You know, everybody gets to ask their questions. And she said, I think it would be better if it were bigger. And I said, well, I don't, let's try it. And so we opened one up to 50 people and we sold it out and it was way better. And she said, why not 75? And I said, all right, we'll try that. And we just kept growing it. And then finally, the only limit we had was when we got to Harris there at Kansas City, we could only get about 250 people in. And then we started having a waiting list and people were upset that they couldn't go. And that's when we tried growing it. And it just grew too big. So Hudson, you were at Hudson, and we did 2 in Ohio that year. We did 1 in Hudson, and you were there. I don't remember if you brought anything that first time or not. You may have brought the engines. And then later
I think I brought 1 engine.
I think so. And then later in that year, we did 1 in Brook Park, Ohio, right out by the Cleveland Airport. And I remember the engines then because we had to roll them down this ramp. And those things are pretty darn heavy and they roll easy. So I remember loading in on that one. So that would have had to have either been like 08, early 09 for that. You know who would remember that? I'll bet Matt, because that was also Matt's first CMC, was Hudson, I think.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. 20 years.
Jackie Wormley was really on a pretty strict diet during the one Harris in Kansas City.
Right.
And I came over to the table. I loved their food at that resort. I came over with this plate of food. She looked at me and she said, "Are you going to eat that?" So I'm going to eat every bit of it.
Yeah. That was...
Even their fried chicken was good.
I could... that was either... I'm going to say that was probably 2014 or 2015. And it was the first CMC after I did my year-long study, read all the books, you know, went back and got the nutritional certification. And then at that first CMC, I started talking about it some. And it actually created a massive problem in the kitchen there at Harrah's because people were not eating a whole bunch of stuff. So they were, you know, nobody would use any of the salad dressings except vinegar and oil. So they kept running out of vinegar and oil. And they were like, this is like the strangest group we've ever seen. What's with all the weird food requests? So I remember that year too. Jackie still eats like that.
So Aaron Hines, do you remember Aaron Hines? He was the guy that his hat, his shirt, and his shoes had to match.
Yes.
He had this really neat pair of blue jeans on and had these brass buttons in the front instead of a zipper. And I said, man, those are really neat pants. And we were talking about them, and a week or 2 later, there came a pair for me in the mail.
That's awesome.
Sent me a pair.
Yeah. I remember Aaron.
There's so many good times, so many, you know, this industry has been very rewarding. It's been a lot of tough times, the recessions, but it's just been so rewarding and such a great career path.
Yeah, you know, when I got digging back through our old videos looking for that one with you under the hood, and I found some like promotional CMC stuff just a couple minutes long. And you watch it, you know, and it's done like a commercial style where it's just flashing different scenes. But you see people and you think, oh yeah, whatever happened to them? I forgot about them. So many good people over the years. And people
Yeah.
kept coming back. Bruce, you know that. That was what happened at Harrah's, is we could only get 250 people. And every year when it was over, we always wanted to reward the people who were supporting us. So at the CMC, when it was over, we would open up registration for the next year. And the people who were there always got first chance. And people said, well, they've already been, you got to let new people. And I said, well, you know what? I really like rewarding the people that support us. So we were to the point where like 60 to 70% of the people that were there were always coming back. So we didn't have that many seats open, and we had a big waiting list. That's why we finally had to move it to Iowa, but then our cost went through the roof, and those last two big CMCs out there just about killed us as a company.
Wow. But the beauty of the venue at Harrah's was everything was convenient.
Everything was right
You
there.
didn't have to walk far.
Yeah.
The trucks were right outside the door. We were working on trucks. That was the first time I saw Mike Beckett.
Oh yeah. That's
with
right.
his string and his tape measure, and
Bruce,
so
I remember coming out there late at night, and if I remember right, you were standing back instructing an owner operator on how to replace his own turbo, and it was happening there in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, there was some great.
We had that one gentleman. Remember, it was 95 degrees, and we didn't realize it. When it's 95 degrees, asphalt's 145 degrees.
Yep. Yeah, it was brutal that year. Whew. I can still feel the heat.
And I didn't learn that until we had sponsored, the Max Mileage had sponsored that rail out in the Las Vegas drag race.
Yeah.
And it was around 95, and they were doing something with the tires, and I asked them a question. You know how I have to ask questions. And they said, well, the temperature of the track's now 145 degrees.
Wow.
I said, really?
Yeah.
So now when I'm walking my dog, it's really hot.
Yeah.
I think, oh, he's walking on 145 degree asphalt.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that as you're going down a highway, in your new trucks, and the new trucks are so quiet and they're powerful, and they'll cruise along effortless at 75 and 80. But you have to remember how hot that highway actually is in the summertime.
I've told the story many times, but I was out in the parking lot doing the radio show from the back of the toy hauler. We had the toy hauler opened up and everybody's standing out there. We put speakers out listening to the show. And the way we connected to the phone system back then to make the show work was with an iPhone, connected all my studio equipment. And that's what got us into the phone system. And I was talking like I'm talking to you now. And when I stopped talking, I didn't get a response. And you figure out, well, we lost our caller. And then I realized the phone got so hot it turned itself off. The phone was so hot, the sun was shining in on it. It was laying right there, and the phone just turned off from it was overheating. People could hear me, but we couldn't hear any of the callers. So we were going to end the show. And then I remember somebody, Aaron or somebody, got the idea, and they ran in and grabbed 2 bags of frozen vegetables out of the freezer and put the iPhone in between the 2 bags of frozen vegetables, and we finished the show.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was.
But if you ever decided to go back to Harrah's, we'd love it.
Yeah,
we'd be there.
That was the place. We had done a lot of places before Harrah's. Then we settled on Harrah's. We did it there more than any other place. Really, we should have stayed there. We should have come up with some sort of a lottery system for tickets to try to make it a little more fair or something. But that was kind of the perfect venue. 250 was a really good number of people. And Harrah's was such a great location. Most people were able to stay right there in the rooms. They had multiple restaurants, the big buffet. That was a really good location. Those were our best events, really. Yeah. All right.
Okay. I think Eric has more
I
about what's
think he
going on
does.
in
Yeah,
shop.
I interrupted him there. So, Eric, back to you.
No, actually, that's about what we have in
Okay.
here. We have that
Got it.
N14 mechanical. We just finished up a cylinder head on a 12.7 Detroit, and now Rick Hambley's truck, and we have a couple ECM mail-ins. We're not really backed up right now, so if you guys have anything you were kind of putting off, maybe waiting, I'm not too sure I want to do this, now's the perfect time to call us. We have some openings available. Give me a call. We'll get you as soon as we can, and we'll treat you the best we can as well.
Perfect. All right. So, is Leroy mic'd up yet? I know sometimes it
Yep,
takes him a little
he's
while.
here.
Leroy, good morning.
Yeah. Good morning.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could handle all that technical electronic stuff there.
It was a little touch and go, but we figured out how to put the head on my head.
What's new and exciting with you?
Had an interesting call this week. Speaking of, Eric mentioned ECM Hawkeye, and this guy called me and he said, "Can you look at this truck for me if I plug in? I'm looking to buy it. I think I could get a really good deal on it because it doesn't run right now." And that's always a little touchy when they don't start. Like he says, it just cranks, but it doesn't start. And he says it kind of sounds like it wants to start, but it doesn't. I mean, we had one of those a couple months ago. I guess it's more than a couple months ago. Eric, you remember the septic truck
Oh, yeah.
that wanted to start but wouldn't run, and that turned into a turbo and injectors and all sorts of things. So I was kind of trying to talk him out of it, and he said, "Well, let's just hook up and kind of look at it." So I go through the typical things you go through in like an ECM Hawkeye. You go through the fault codes and you go through the after treatment history. There was no fault codes. The after treatment history looked okay. You go through the abuse history. Is there a lot of crankcase pressure? Is that why it doesn't start? Not really looking like anything. And then we get to sort of looking at the section where you get live data. So one of the things I always do, and you can do this with an OTR tool as well, is you look at what the key on engine off values are, and specifically on a cold engine, because you can look down through all the sensors and see, well, it's 70 degrees outside, so the temperature sensors should all read 70 degrees if it hasn't been ran in 12 hours. They should all stabilize. And the same thing with pressure sensors as well. Excuse me. So what we ended up finding was the exhaust pressure sensor was reading like 160 psi with just key on and engine off.
Wow.
I was like, well, that's a little bit high. And I've seen this before where somebody works on like the EGR system trying to do the right thing, like Eric mentioned, like you clean it out and you clean the venturi tubes. But what happens almost, I would say a good 3 out of 10 times, it's not frequent, but it's not uncommon, is somebody ends up whacking the exhaust pressure sensor with the ratchet, with the handle of the ratchet, and it breaks the sensor. And it doesn't throw any fault codes, but it makes the sensor read funny. And I told the guy, and this was kind of the unfortunate, awkward part, was the seller was in the background, and he walks over, and I said, "Well, pop the hood and grab the exhaust pressure sensor. I bet it's broke, because I've seen this a couple of times." And he picks up the hood, walks over there, and he grabs it, and he's like, "Well, it looks okay." And he shakes it around a little bit and snaps it right in half. And I was like, "Well, that's why it doesn't start, because what happens is the ECM sees 160 psi back pressure, and you would think that it would try to open the turbo up, but for whatever reason, there must be a fail safe or something in there, but they just do not start when that sensor breaks."
Huh.
And I was like, "Well, if you put a new sensor in there, it's going to start." And there was some muttering going on in the background between the seller and maybe his buddy or something that was there.
Right.
And the conversation quickly went from, "Well, thank you, have a nice day. Thanks for helping me look at that." So I don't know if that guy bought that truck or not, because I think the deal fell through once I told him it was just a $80 sensor is why his truck didn't start.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the asking price probably went up.
I think it went up a lot. Yeah.
So which sensor was that?
the exhaust back pressure setter. So it measures the pressure in the exhaust manifold.
Where is that located?
Kind of like up on the thermostat housing. There's a small tube that runs from the exhaust manifold up to the bottom of the thermostat housing, and a sensor sits on top.
Is this on most all the engines?
It's on all the Cummins engines. Packard engines have it. Detroit engines don't because they have an asymmetrical turbo. And I don't know if Volvos have it or not, but I know Packard products and Cummins products have it.
Leroy, you just used a term I haven't heard before. I understand what asymmetrical. What is an asymmetrical turbo, though? Never heard that.
So that's what the turbo type is on all the like DD engines. Well, not all of them, but if it doesn't have the turbine with a fixed vane turbo on it, it has what they call an asymmetrical turbo. And it pretty much just is another way to drive the EGR. So the Cummins uses a VGT turbo that can create back pressure from the manifolds that drives EGR. The way that the Detroit does it is you have a turbine housing with two different exhaust paths, one for the front three and one for the back three, and a valve inside of the turbo that can either close off the front three cylinders to drive EGR or open it up to allow all the exhaust flow through to make more boost.
Okay.
So they're doing it with just a single valve inside of the vane of the turbine housing to drive EGR off the front three.
Got it.
Which is, I think, is a little goofy why you would want to drive the engine only off of three cylinders with EGR. I feel like that's just kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe just because it's asymmetrical to me that you have some cylinders driving EGR and others free flowing.
That's kind of what caught my attention was that word, because in essence, asymmetrical kind of means unbalanced.
Yeah, right. Not symmetrical. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. I'd never heard that.
Yeah, that's what I think everything has it now. I don't know if they still do the mechanical driven turbine like Volvo does.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do it. I know the DD16's had it for a while, but I don't know if do they still have a DD16, Eric?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. I thought they got rid of it by now, but.
Well, like Volvo's 16-liter, I don't believe they sell in the States anymore. I think that's only a European engine.
Oh, maybe that's something.
Yeah.
That's because you talked them out of it, Kevin.
I bashed
you
that engine.
Not that engine so much. They just said, well, we're not bringing that into the U.S. anymore because of Kevin.
I think that might have been true. At one point, people wouldn't even call me if they had that engine anymore.
See, Leroy, that term you just used reminds me of back when 48 years ago and started studying turbochargers, and there was a tangential and a non-tangential turbine housing. I thought, no, what in the heck? And we didn't have Google. There was nobody to call.
Right.
There weren't people to call. So you had to stand there and study and try to figure things out. And it's so much easier today because you can just find information. But tangential and non-tangential turbine housings.
Hey, Bruce, it's interesting because, we talk about we're in the information age and we have access to so much information right in our pocket. And yet people are more ignorant now than ever. And part of it is, yes, you have access to all of that information. How do you know what's right now? Because if you look deep enough, you're going to find 37 answers to every question you ask, and they're all going to be, how do you know which source anymore is right when you have access to all of this information? I understand
like,
you and I, if we're, anybody on this call, if we're looking up something mechanical, we have enough base of knowledge that probably figure out when we're looking for more information, we figure out what's right or wrong. But if you are ignorant of a subject, whether it's health or engines or whatever, and you are ignorant, you don't have a base of knowledge, it's really difficult to figure out who's right.
Yeah,
That's true.
there's that. And I think the other thing too is sometimes people confuse information gathering with learning.
Yeah,
Like you
good
talk to
point.
some people and like, I have this whole library and I have all these DVDs, but they've never read any of them, they never watched any of them, or
Right.
they've watched a few and read some pages. And they're like, "Yeah, I read that book." You're like, you read 13 pages of it, but you didn't really understand it. You didn't put it into practice. You don't have, experience with it. So information gathering is not learning, which is really easy to do nowadays because you can just go online and
Click.
buy a course or buy a book
Right.
about business, and now you're a business mastermind.
Right.
I'm those people. I will skim Cliff Notes just to get through it faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty common nowadays. It's so easy to get it.
It is. It's too easy in some
Well,
cases.
I will tell you something about books because I read a lot of books and I have my whole life. I used to have this weird obsession that if I started a book, I had to finish it. I don't know what it was, and I had to force myself to get over that because when you want to get a lot of reading done, some books are not worth finishing. They're just not. And then if you really want to be efficient in your learning, um, Eric, you'll do what you just said because most books really there's a sweet spot for the length of a book if it's going to get published. Can't be too short, can't be too long. Most books should be about half. Most books for learning, for knowledge, should be about half the length that they really are. They have to throw in a ton of
Oh
filler
yeah,
just to get to the right size of a book. And when you read enough, you start to realize when you've gotten the meat of it, and when the rest of it is just filler.
yeah, that's irritating. It
It
seems like a
is.
lot of, like you said, like the learning books, like self-help or
Right.
like things like that where I read this book one time I thought was supposed to be interesting about like nasal breathing, about how like this guy did all this stuff about how mouth breathers are bad. I don't
Hey,
know. It seemed
the
interesting at the time,
yeah,
but
I may even know
the
what
whole
book
book
you.
was just like
I may even know what book you're talking about. The title of the book was "Breathe," wasn't it? Is that the one?
I don't think. I don't really remember. It's been a couple of years, but
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
like you said, the book could have been 30 pages long. I was like, I don't need to
easily.
just keep reiterating the same points. Oh, terrible.
That's that. And in self-help books, it's the worst.
The most ironic was like the 80/20 rule book.
That is kind of ironic.
So I'm
You
like,
could have said this with 80% less words.
yeah, you could have did 20% of this book. I don't need this whole book. I'm like, I got it in the first like chapter and a half. I just quit reading the book. Everyone's like, you
Exactly.
got to read this. I was like, I got it.
I got
Okay.
it. Yeah, I got it. This is the whole message. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else we got?
That's all I got.
Hey, Eric, I do want to go back to one thing, and we talk about maintenance and replacing a lot of things. Tell me what you think about this, because the one thing I heard in that list that I would probably start rethinking some of these. It's hard to say you shouldn't do that kind of scheduled maintenance because there's, like I said earlier, other than some cost, there's almost no downside. You're really going to minimize your downtime and your headaches and all that. But when I heard belts and hoses, boy, it seems to me like whatever the hell they're making belts and hoses out of these days, they just last forever. I mean, do you guys see a lot of problems on newer, more modern trucks with that kind of stuff wearing out?
Not near as much.
Yeah.
I know I used to have a state inspection license in PA when I had my own shop, and the rule was if you have more than 10 cracks per inch, you have to replace the belt under PA state law. And I had put a new diesel or a new belt on my diesel pickup, probably, I don't know, within the last 2 years, I put it on there. And I was driving out to Ohio to get some parts for the race car earlier this year, and my belt tensioner went out and it shredded the belt. And of course, everything left me on the side of the road. And as I'm picking up the piece of the belt, I'm looking, there was cracks all through that belt. I'm thinking, it was a good belt. I mean, it was like Continental
Huh.
or Goodyear. It wasn't like an Amazon
Right.
Chinesium or anything. It was a brand new belt I bought local to mom and pop store. And I thought, what in the world would make this thing stress crack within like literally
Yeah.
20,000 miles? So I don't know. I mean, I don't see a lot of hoses unless the truck comes in and it's got like, 1,000,000 miles and that's the original heater hose and you grab it and it's like rock solid.
Right.
Is that a hard line? No, that thing's supposed to be rubber, but it doesn't flex at all. So
Right.
those ones I expect. This one I don't, but there again, because of the magnitude of this gentleman's record keeping,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
he
Right.
does everything way in advance. I don't have a problem with that either. Because again, I mean, the way the economy and everything is right now, you want to stay on the good graces of all the brokers out there.
No doubt. Yeah.
You have to take advantage.
You-
So the little bit that it does cost to change yet, it definitely might be worth it in the long run.
Well, here's another way of looking at it. We really focus on the bottom line. How do we get somebody as profitable as possible? And once you get there, the beauty of it is then you get to make these kind of decisions, and it's not a big deal. He's going to spend this money. He has it. He probably operates very efficiently in his business, and then he can make the decision to spend a little extra on preventative maintenance and sleep better at night and service his customers better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So whenever I work on a vehicle, and on the old Big Cam Cummins, we had a lot of small hoses that connected things. I would take my thumbnail, and at the end of the hose, you have the hose clamp, and then you tighten up the clamp, and the hose flares up a little bit. You just take your thumbnail, and if you can't sink it into that hose, that means it's too hard and it's too brittle, and it's soon to fail. And that was the part of, or whenever I decided it was time to change those hoses. So years ago, for a company in Western Pennsylvania, we built a long block, and they were going to put everything on it. And I said, we have the small hose kit. It was $66. Gives you all the small hoses on the engine, and they're all have a specific reason. A hose that's made to carry hot air from the aftercooler to the air compressor is one type of hose. The hose that carries the oil from the drain pipe of the turbocharger into the block is a different type of hose. So whether it's carrying hot air, fuel, or hot oil, it's different hoses. And you do get a warranty if you use OEM hoses. And they said, nah, our old hoses are fine. And they decided they were 2 exits away in the turnpike, and they put the engine together, put all their old hoses on, and they were bringing the truck over for us to reset the overhead. And one of the hoses that fed the aftercooler was too hard. And when they tightened up the clamp, it didn't seal the hose. And they lost all the coolant in that 25 miles and burned up the brand new engine.
Oh.
For the sake of $66 worth of hoses.
Wow. Yeah, that's bad.
So, yeah, when you're being too frugal, it's going to cost you money. Years ago, when we had mufflers, a guy would say, "Well, my muffler just fell off." I said, "Fell off? You don't walk around and look at your truck? Overnight me a muffler." I said, "It costs more to overnight the muffler than the muffler cost."
Yeah.
And years ago, I'd hear comments, "I won't replace anything on my truck until it breaks." And it's too late.
It is. Yeah.
So I like preventative maintenance. I always have. I run my vehicles a long time. I do a lot of preventative maintenance. And my old 95 Dodge with the Cummins is still running. It's at Moberly, Missouri with Jeff Nelson and Turnaround Transport. And so is my Kenworth. And they're all still running. So.
Yep. All right. Good stuff. We done for our open here? We got some calls coming in.
Yeah, let's take some calls.
All right. Let's do that. Let's get started in Arkansas today. Richard, welcome.
Hey guys, I just want to call and give a kudos to a company out of Roseville, Minnesota. called Universal Truck Parts. I ordered a scale start module from them. Leroy's got my old one, checking it out. If he can fix that one, I'll put that in my other truck. But I wanted to get it. I found this one, and it wasn't but $200 more than what the Maxwell start module was. It was $970, I believe, for the module. And I ordered it. The day that I ordered it, the guy called me right after I ordered it, make sure everything was right, and I told him yeah. He called me back about 4 hours later, probably about 2 or 3 hours later. He called me back. He said, we might have a little problem. I said, well, what's that? He said that the box that it come in is damaged on it. We opened it up, looked at the module, and everything's fine on it. All it was is just the side of the box was scraped, and it ripped the box. And he took pictures of it and sent me pictures and everything. He asked me, did I want that or not? And I was like, yeah, as long as the product's not damaged, I'll take that. And he says, okay, I just wanted to let you know that the box was damaged, but the product wasn't damaged. So he put it in another box and taped it up and sent it to me and got it installed in my truck. So I just want to give kudos out for them because they was very professional.
Excellent.
It was real people that answered the phone, not no stupid machine either.
Good. I like that.
And also, one thing I'd like. Go ahead.
When you call Pittsburgh Power, you don't get a machine answering the phone either.
Yeah.
You don't.
So
yeah.
I agree with you on that. I like a person to answer the phone.
Same thing here.
One thing I'd like to say, what Bruce just mentioned earlier about not waiting till things break to fix it. One thing I've always realized that if you wait till a part that I'll just wait till it breaks before I fix it. If you wait till that point, 9 times out of 10, you're fixing more than just one part that breaks, because when that part breaks, several other parts is going to break right along with it.
That's a very true statement right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't change your torsional damper onto the front of the crank every 500,000 miles and you start breaking crankshafts, camshafts, accessory drive shafts, alternator brackets, air conditioning, compressor brackets, input shafts of the transmission, or knock the springs right out of the clutch disc. Now look at what you're going to spend.
Yep.
So it's very true what you said there.
Yep, and I also carry a alternator belt, the main belt, just in case mine was to ever crack. I do look at them and make sure that they're not got any cracks, but I figured that's not going to do too much of a damage. But I also always have an extra belt just in case something was to happen. But I do check them out as far as the cracks on them and everything. I just wanted to give kudos for the Universal Truck Parts in Roseville, Minnesota. They was very professional at their business.
Excellent. Love that. Thanks. Right.
So can you give me a call? Whoop, is he still there?
He's gone. He's probably listening, so go ahead.
I was going to say, have him give me a call after the show to talk about your Maxwell. He sent it in a couple weeks ago, and we were all excited to fix it. And it seems to work. There's nothing wrong with it. We've charged it up and discharged it at least a dozen times. It's been the center of attention of a lot of fun experiments.
I'll bet.
And it still works. So give me a call.
Interesting. Huh. They're fairly simple, aren't they? I mean, it's not a really complicated device.
Yeah, it just has a safety/balance board, and then it has like 12 capacitors inside.
Yeah.
I posted a picture of it on the Truck Tribe.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Chicago. Brandon, welcome.
Hey, Kevin. I haven't missed a show in 9 years.
Wow.
And I've never heard you guys.
Hey, Brandon.
Yeah.
That's a better record than I have.
Yeah. When I learned how to drive, my trainer flipped on your show and said, "Oh, you'll like this guy," and it stuck, and it was easy to with XM or whatever to rewind. Used to have 10 shows always loaded, ready to go. You guys have never talked about grease maintenance intervals, the 15,000, if how serious that is. And then you guys have never talked about which grease zerks can handle more than one pump or two pumps, and which ones are damaged by greasing extra. And I'm shocked at how many people don't know which.
Brandon, I'm going to jump in here. I remember just recently, within the last couple of weeks, having a discussion just like this.
About the damage?
No, not about the damage.
I don't remember.
And I'm going to say something, and I don't think I'm wrong here. And here's my justification for my thought process. I started putting automatic greasers on my trucks back in 1995, the same time I started with bypass oil filtration. And almost every truck I owned from 1995 till when I sold my company, or when I sold even my last truck, which wasn't that long ago, they all had the automatic grease system on them. And the way it worked was you set a timer on the system how often you wanted the system to send out a shot of grease. And I kept mine set so that when I did a walk around every day, I could see new grease coming out of my fittings. The only downside to that system, when you run it that way, your parts will last forever. You got to clean it because you will build up a lot of grease around the components. I'm going to say I don't know of any Zerk fittings that would be damaged by too much grease. Had that been the case, these grease systems wouldn't work. Am I wrong on that? Does anybody know of a grease fitting on a truck that would be damaged?
I think it's not the Zerk, but if you take a tie rod end, it has the rubber. And as you pump grease into it, you see it start to bellow out.
Right.
One guy told me years ago, I pump it until I see clean grease coming out. And then I've heard, no, but you're ruining the seal. So you want to pump that type of fitting until it bellows out. And that way it's holding pressure into the tie rod assembly. But what about a drive shaft? Doesn't have that. So I think you want to pump that until you see clean grease. And then always have these blue shop towels to wipe off excess.
Yeah, let's go back
and
to
isn't the
see, so the way it was explained to me was that if grease can come out of that seal, and it can, then dirt and water can get back in the other way. And the benefit of seeing new grease is you've pumped out all the contaminants. And if there's some damage that's done to that tie rod, I'd like to know what it was, because I never had to replace a tie rod joint. And I ran these grease systems that absolutely forced new grease through these fittings all day long.
How much grease did you go through in a week or a month?
Not a lot. I mean, it doesn't take much. If you think about it, once the every joint or greased component is full, then it only takes a little shot. And if you're doing that, like I said, it was a timer. You could have it one shot an hour or whatever. And you kind of got used to, okay, if I turn it here, at the end of the day, I'll kind of see new grease, but I'm not pumping it all out onto the ground. It's not that bad. But I'm trying to remember, I don't even think I fill the canister itself. You put a reservoir on the side of the frame for this system. I'm thinking maybe I refilled it once a quarter. I mean, it wasn't that often.
I wonder if Al Hemerson's listening to the show, because he's a real maintenance buff and with his farm equipment, and he ran some old iron and never had problems. I'm going to text him right now, see if he can call in.
I've always heard this about like trailer wheel bearings with the Zerk fitting right on the wheel bearing, that, if you pump those too much, you'll blow out the seal in the back. I'm not even sure if that's true, though.
They say the same thing about the S-cam has a seal back there, and they say the same thing about the drive line has a seal, just like the boat trailers. That's why I backed way off my grease, just doing a couple pumps and everything, except for the kingpins.
So on the boat trailer, you have that cap. Somebody help me. What's that called in the front? It fills with grease. What was that called?
I think we just called it a hub.
Yeah, but no, there was a special cap that was spring loaded, and then there was another axle.
That's an addition. That's an upgrade. That's a bearing buddy or whatever it's called. That's
something like that. Then there's another trailer axle for whether it's race car trailers, boat trailers, that the hole went back and came up behind the second bearing and grease that bearing. And I like that setup. And
okay,
as far as
I was just go ahead.
And are you familiar with the Lucas tacky grease? It's real sticky, and it holds in places very well, and it has its purpose for different places. But you brought up a great subject, and we should talk more about that. And Eric, what's your you're a maintenance guy. What's your thoughts on?
Half the people say more is better, and then half the people say, well, yeah, but on this one and that one, the drive line, the S-cams, and boats, you blow out the seal, and now you got big problems. So I just kind of wanted it to be talked about.
Yeah, no,
sure.
and I'll just use my example of the automatic lube systems. That that's the point of how it works. You always want to be able to see new grease coming out. And I will say this. I cannot remember a single greased component on any of those trucks, and I usually keep mine to about 1.2 million, 1.3 million. I just, once I went with the automatic lube system, I never replaced another greased component again, ever.
I have one more question. If it was the middle of winter, you can't really get under your truck without blocking it up because the skirts are low, how serious would you take that 15,000 mile interval?
That is
so far, I got 9 years of hitting it.
Well, that's something else we talked about, that we're already starting trucks with a lot less Zerk things than what they used to have. We're going the same way we did with cars. Does anybody grease anything on a car anymore? The components are that many times don't need grease at all anymore. So in trucks, we're kind of in the transition. We're not completely greaseless, but I think we'll be there at some point. And I don't think it will go back to the preventative maintenance. You could never go wrong greasing every 15,000 miles. Let's just start there. So the fact that you've hit that time every time, good. I mean, grease is cheap. The time you spend greasing your own truck is good time because you're looking at other things. So I could never criticize greasing too often. But do I think it's necessary? I don't think 15,000 miles is necessary anymore. But if you're doing it, and like I said, you're looking at your truck, there's nothing wrong with doing it. But if I missed one and I didn't get to it till 25,000 miles, I wouldn't lose any sleep.
I'm going to go back in years. They used to change fuel filters every Saturday. These are people that were home every week. And I think they used to grease their truck once a week. And if I had a truck that was low to the ground and I couldn't get under it at home, I would get 2x6 and I would cut them on an angle and I would screw them together so I could drive the truck up on those wooden blocks and get underneath that truck and be able to grease it and inspect.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just winter's coming, getting older, and it's you start questioning that 15,000 mark in your head. But I'm going to keep doing it. I got 9 years doing it. I'm going to stick with it. And of course, finding that clean piece of pavement is difficult too.
Yeah.
So, can you take the truck home?
I don't go home too often. It's boring. But I just thought it should be discussed. I've just never heard the seals behind. I just thought it was worthy of a discussion. And when I turned on my phone app, that you guys were live now. All right, I've taken enough of your time.
No,
on to some important calls.
It was a great call. Thanks. Let's.
Hey, I have Kevin. I have a brain fade right now. What's the pin that holds the front wheels on?
Huh? The pin.
What's the pin? Instead of ball joints, we have a
Kingpin?
on a semi.
The kingpin?
Okay, kingpin. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On a kingpin, when you're greasing a kingpin, is there any? I don't think there's any seal. I don't think you can put too much grease in a kingpin. And do the steering link that connects the steering shaft to the tie rod assembly. That has the cups on it too, but I don't think those bellow out. And I think you can just grease those until you see clean grease coming out.
Yeah, like I said, every truck I own, the only Zerk fittings on the truck that were not plumbed and greased constantly are the rotating assemblies. The steering shaft itself has a Zerk on it. You can't do that because it's turning, and the drive shaft. But when I went to the automatic grease systems, I also went to the sealed lifetime U-joints, and those worked fantastic for me even way back then.
The sealed U-joints are superior. Like
yeah.
In my race car stuff, my driveline guy won't use anything but the sealed ones. If I take a U-joint to him with a Zerk fitting in it, he will literally throw it in the garbage. Ask me how
Good.
I know. I did it by accident. He looked at me, grabbed the box, threw it right in the garbage can. I'm like, that was like $35.
Yeah.
He's like,
Eric,
I don't care. It'll be worth it in the long run. Trust me.
Back in the mid to late 90s, whenever those first started, and in the beginning, they weren't even lifetime. They were long life. And you would not believe how many people called me an idiot because I was promoting those back then. I was saying, look, why wouldn't you use these? It's one less fail point. It's one less thing to have to grease. And with my automatic lube system, not having to grease the drive shaft was kind of a big deal. I don't have to grease anything. I just would still get under there and crawl around and look at the truck. But I took a lot of heat. People called me an idiot. Oh, those things are junk. That's never going to work. Well, here we are. They're pretty common these days. All right, let's grab another call. Let's go to Kansas. Jim, welcome.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about a harmonic damper and the balancer for a Cummins X15 2019, and it's in a T680. And I asked the guys at Kenworth shop if that this engine's got a little imbalance to it, and it clacks. I don't know how to explain it, but you can hear it and feel it. And so I was going to change the damper, and I suggested putting that balancer in, and they said, you can't get a balancer in on that. And said, so I heard you guys talking about doing that on that 579 Peterbilt. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I figured that T680 and a 579 would be similar.
Sure. Eric, do we have room on that engine to change the torsional damper and put the balancer on?
There's a 50-50 chance. Even though the 579 and T680s look a lot alike, the engine configuration to radiator is different. There are some different clearances in there, and I'm not exactly sure if it's mount placement, like the perch for the mounts, or if it's just the radiator itself that's maybe a little bit different. On the Cummins ISX and X15 only, there's the mercury-filled balancing, which a lot of people get confused. They call it a harmonic balancer. And the crankshaft dampener is like the 45-pound dumbbell weight that's on the front of every engine ever made. And then we also came up with
Eric,
the balancing.
Eric?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to correct you on that. Try to find one on the front of a Volvo.
Okay.
They're strange.
Normal.
Right.
Let's say normal album.
Yeah, that used to be a true statement. It was on the front of every engine, virtually identical. And then we got into these proprietary engines where it's not true on the, and I assume the Mac's the same way. It's not there like we're used to.
How much clearance does that have to have for that balancer?
It goes on the front side of the crankshaft dampener.
I thought it went on the back.
On every engine but the Cummins ISX or X15. On the Cummins one, you have to mount it on the front side, yes. And it's basically like a pizza pan. It's a flat steel plate that has a tube ring around the outer edge. What I always
it looks like a centromatic wheel balancer.
That's who makes them. That's exactly what we started out with. We have
right.
The crankshaft dampers.
Right.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is take your thumb and just rub it around the outside lip diameter of the dampener on the front side. If you can clear your thumb all the way around, then it should fit. In cases like this, though, a lot of guys will buy them and try to fit them up, and more than likely they will. Sometimes you may have to do a little finessing, not on the balancer, but maybe if there's a bracket or something that's just a minute amount away. Sometimes guys will take a little rat tail file and they'll just do a clearance, like almost like deburring at that point. Maybe just take a little bit of like rough casting off or something just to clear it. All of the work it needs to do is just spin in a circular motion. So as long as you can clear that with your thumb, you can use that.
Okay, so it goes on the front of the damper. So I just take my thumb, run it around the outer edge of the damper, and if it will fit my thumb, that balancer will go in there.
Yes. Yeah, just all you want to do is clear it with your thumb to make the tube ring will fit.
Okay, then one more question. If I can't get the balancer to work, would I be ahead to just go ahead and buy the heavy duty damper? And that way, maybe it would clear up the problem.
You won't be able to fit it. If you can't fit a balancing ring in there, you won't be able to fit the heavy duty dampener because the heavy duty dampener is like 2 inches thick, where the factory one, the one you have now, like 1.25.
Okay. So I was looking at the tune that you guys have. You call it kind of like a stock tune. It just takes your engine up to the max factory horsepower, I guess, at that particular configuration. And I think 505 is the max on this efficiency series. What I want to know is when you do that, or if I had that done, this truck has a auto shifter. Does the transmission program just, it doesn't really care what the engine's doing, or how does that work?
I don't think you can say that it doesn't care, but it's just going to receive those torque messages from the ECM, which are going to be higher than what it is now, but you're not going outside of the parameters of what that TCM can handle, because sometimes when you do a tune on an engine that exceeds it, you'll get a check engine light for it, but anything that is factory is going to have all that sorted out. So if you go to
it's not going to increase the torque that much anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the highest factory of 505, fine.
So if the this thing's got the what do you call it, the progressive shift, it accelerates the same speed bobtail as it does loaded. I mean, you can't hardly tell the difference till it gets up into the higher gears. It just will not go because of that progressive shift program. And when you do that tune, will it change that progressive shift program, or will it stay intact?
So progressive shift is part of your customer changeable options, so that would stay even with the tune. But being it's customer changeable, that means that you can disable that feature if you'd like. You can disable.
So when you're in there, when you were in there, you could change it, and it would work all right.
Yeah, of course.
The guy at Kenworth told me it takes like an hour or two to change that progressive shift program. And I thought, that don't sound right. I heard the guys on
That
Power said that there's
that
like a switch inside there. You just
it only takes an hour if you take
Yeah, I
a
mean,
59-minute break first.
yeah,
well,
you gotta open the left.
$227 an hour. You know, it adds up fast.
Well, sure, they're going to charge you for an hour, but it doesn't take an hour.
Yeah.
Oh no, Kevin.
He said,
Yeah, you
he
got.
told me he had to go into every gear in the program and change the parameters, which I
And
thought
now
sounded. Yeah.
it's the coffee.
All right, guys, you've answered my questions. I'll just get my thumb out and do some measuring and
There
give
you
me a
go.
balancer and a damper order.
Make sure you calibrate that thumb before you do that. Hey, I'm going to do something a little odd because I scrolled the news feed while we're doing the show, and I just saw a really, really odd post. And I want people to go check it out and send me a message if with what's going on with this. Let me find that again. I'm going to read it. It says Trump calls emergency press conference from Mar-a-Lago. Trump's live right now as Kamala collapses. Which I have no idea what that means. If somebody wants to check their news and maybe send me an update on that. Let's go to Oregon. Talon, welcome.
Hey guys, so I was a caller a few weeks ago about the two MX-13s that blew up a year apart with the same mileage.
Yeah, I remember.
And then Kevin, last Monday there was another caller called in about a few trucks in her fleet with MX-13s that they were replacing around 200,000 miles. They had 3 of them go out.
Yeah, we seem to be getting a lot of these reports. Something weird seems to be going on with that engine.
And I meant to call in last week, but I just got busy. And just for the Pittsburgh Power guys, I had a truck pulling beside me at a truck stop. And in the time it took him to get from the fuel island, his truck started knocking. By the time he got into a parking spot and he pulled in right beside me, he threw a rod.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I'm not.
And that was 2024 T680.
With the pack car?
Yeah, with that MX. The part of the problem with this is that if I had to guess, I would say that is probably the engine with the least number of units in American trucks. I don't know if it doesn't sell a lot. So it takes us longer to spot these kinds of patterns, but this one seems like it's definitely developing into a pattern.
So I just wanted to give my input about that, and then back to the thing about grease zerks. So, from my understanding, is the guy was right with the sealed grease bearings. You can over-grease them and blow out the seal, and then contaminants can get in. But Kevin, what you were doing, because you kept pumping more and more grease out or into them, as the contaminants tried to go in, you just pump the contaminants back out, so you'd never have an issue with them.
That kind of makes sense. Yeah, I guess if you're going to do that, you better do it often enough that the contaminants aren't getting back in.
I used to work at a grain terminal, and we'd have guys that would over-grease certain bearings and blow out the seal, and then before they'd get back to it a week later, that bearing would be gone. But if you're constantly pushing new grease in, then it's constantly pushing all the contaminants out. So
yeah, it worked.
And I had a truck I was driving that was set up every time the air compressors popped off at like 120 psi. It pumped out 1 shot of grease. And that was a fairly good system until you're idling your truck in the heat and bobtailing, and you get out and there's 3 inches of grease on your 50 wheel.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
that was the downside. Occasionally, you'd get a lot of grease in places. You had to keep it clean. Let's go to Illinois. Austin, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Got a question. So, I had my truck break down about 2 weeks ago and went to the shop, and they discovered that the DPF was reading like a 4.5. I don't know what kind of number I don't know what that was referring to, but they basically said it was in the red when they did their testing.
Who tested this, Austin?
A Volvo dealer did the DPF filter.
Were they checking the flow rate?
Yes.
Okay. The DPF alternative method we use here is kind of similar. If it's the same test, I'm assuming they did. What we do here is we actually have a flow bench with a gauge on it, and it can read how much cubic feet per minute, CFM of air, goes through the unit. And I'm just going to throw some hypothetical numbers out there. Like on a newer Cummins filter, brand new is like 1.80. We just had one in here not too long ago that flowed 3.80, which was what they call in the red, which I'm assuming is what they're referring to. And they rate it like a stoplight: green, yellow, and red. Green is brand new. Yellow means there's some obstruction. Red means it's bad. It's completely plugged up. So when you measure them that way, you get a feel for how much junk and crud's inside them.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious because this truck only has 236,000 miles on it. I mean, how did that occur so fast?
It could occur from a bunch of reasons. First off, are you running our max mileage catalyst?
Yeah, I am. When I got the truck at 189,000 miles. But funny story about that. I was gonna bring that up. I told the dealer that I used that, and he told me that I could actually void my warranty. I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of it, but it's false.
Yeah,
There's
dealers say that
also
a lot.
it's called a Magnuson-Moss Act. Yeah, a lot of dealers are just uneducated on what it can do, and they kind of blanket all aftermarket pieces as that because it's kind of like their fail-safe mode. Like, oh well, if it's not factory, then it's illegal, and that's not the case at all. But there is a thing. It's an article. It's called the Magnuson-Moss Act. And what that states is if you're going to void somebody's warranty for an aftermarket item, you have to prove that aftermarket item caused the failure. And they can't. I mean, it's impossible. We literally have thousands of people that can back us up on their results by running the max mileage for the last so many years. But what exactly was this truck? You said you bought it at 189,000 miles?
Correct.
Okay, and how many are on now?
236.
Okay, so you've put on roughly about 47,000 miles. Without knowing the past history of the previous owner, it's kind of hard to diagnose this over the phone. Now, have you been religiously putting catalyst in this truck since you bought it, or is it kind of like when you remember?
I'll like do it, and then like I might forget one fill up, but then once I go back to fill up again, I'll just put I'll just use the max that I can fill my tank when I fill my tanks back up. But like yes, I use it religiously, unless maybe I'll forget once or twice.
Okay. The key to the catalyst is continuancy. You have to be, very diligent about putting it in because it's a consistency item. It needs to stay in there to keep the carbon stuff out. So without knowing the history of the truck, the previous owner may have done a lot of idling. Is there an APU on the truck?
No.
Okay.
I don't
That's
idle.
probably where it. Okay. Usually what happens is whenever you idle a truck, you don't create enough heat in the after treatment system and even in the combustion chamber to get rid of the carbon and soot buildup. And therefore, when you have a lot of idle time, and I mean a lot, your ECM report has over 20% lifetime idle hours, that's a lot. And what will happen is it'll conglomerate. And once you get carbon buildup in anywhere in the engine, it acts as a fly trap for more carbon and soot. It's a great building foundation for it. And we learned this through our Dorothy filters years ago. It would collect more soot after there was a fine layer of soot film on the canister itself. So once you get some in there, it's just going to take off, and there's no way to stop it unless you run the catalyst. So that's probably why you're having the issues you are at such an early mileage, is because of all the idling time. Now, there's other factors too. You know, there could be bad fuel. There could have been a lack of maintenance as far as getting the overhead run when they should. If the valves are off a little bit, that's going to throw the tables off of the air-fuel ratio. If somebody tried to tune it that didn't know what they were doing in the past, that could throw it off. Dirty air filters. You know, there's a lot of variables here that can contribute to carbon and soot. If that air-fuel ratio is off by a smidgen, it doesn't take much. And that's why we want to try to eliminate the problem at the root of its cause, that if those other factors kind of come into role, they're not going to be as detrimental as like what you're experiencing with that low mileage.
Okay. Well, that may mean we wouldn't have had to warranted it and replaced it. So I have a brand new one now. And what's great about that is my fuel mileage shot up an entire mile per gallon. Like I was getting like in the 6.5 when I was fully loaded. And I'm fully loaded today, and I drove from California to Illinois, and I'm at 7.67. That's amazing because every time I've been fully loaded, I always got 6 or 6.5. So
when a filter's full like that, when the filter's full like that, the ECM knows that, and it starts cutting back on everything. You'll do an increased amount of DEF fluid. You'll start losing fuel mileage, performance, everything, because the engine isn't running to optimum spec like it should be. So that's why it's so crucial to run this. We want to get rid of the carbon and soot at the root of its problem.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll start using it a lot. And then what if I use the other stuff, the one that's in the black bottle? I forget what it's called.
Flashpoint. Yeah, that's our flashpoint. That's where we actually call it like our own super fuel at that point, because you're getting rid of the carbon and soot with the catalyst, but then you're also adding cetane, you're adding a lubricity adder, you're adding detergents, and you also have a water emulsifier. So when you conglomerate those two together, it actually makes your own super fuel, because the fuel we're getting out there today is not anywhere like it used to be. It's really crappy, you know, to put it very politely. It's just not what it should be. So now we're trying to level it to better fuel like what it used to be.
Let's just say it's weak. It's very weak on all the good stuff that it takes to make the engine run.
Okay. So if I run that stuff, my fuel mileage might go up a little bit more too.
We have a lot of guys call us and say they're picking up fuel mileage.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give it a try and see. Mix them together and go from there.
All right.
Thanks.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, I just looked, I was reading something. I just looked up at the board. We don't have any calls. So we might wrap this up early today. I have CMC to get ready for. Anybody? Go ahead, Bruce.
We didn't hear from Paul Carmine yet.
You know, I thought I saw
what happened to Paul.
I thought I saw him up on the board earlier. I'm not sure. You know, part of the problems we've been having with my internet connection, I'm going to make sure it's not on my end, but it's possible the phone system has been having some issues. We've got a call coming in. Oh, looks like Herschel's calling in right now. There's a couple more. So it looks like we're staying here. Calls are starting to come in. I'm not sure if our system's just dropping calls or what's going on. Anybody have anything to talk about while we're screening a couple calls here?
No, your phone is breaking up on and off a little bit.
Yeah, I think part of the problem.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah, like part of the problem is my internet. I know, but I think we're also. I think this phone server has some issues. All right, we've got Herschel with us. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Kevin.
Hey
Well,
there.
you made a mistake. You said you don't have any calls, so I fixed it.
Ah, well, there you go. There you go.
I have a question about that. Oh, what's it called? The guy just said it in the black bottle. Come on, brain. Flashpoint. That's it.
Yep.
I have been using historically in that Volvo that I had. Got rid of that one. I've been using that. All the stuff Joel talks about. Hot Shot Secret. Because of the cetane. But I'm curious about your guys' stuff. I was reading on there on your website about it, and it looks like, and I'm not a scientist, but it looks like it has more stuff that it might be better than the Hot Shot. Don't know that that's true, but it looks like it. And it's 1 ounce for 15 gallon instead of 1 ounce for 10, like the Catalyst. That's one thing I did like about the Hot Shot is it was 1 ounce for 10. If you did 1 ounce for 10,
well, hold on.
All right.
Did you? Okay, maybe I heard it wrong.
No,
Okay.
I heard it too. It's 1 ounce per 25 gallons on the Catalyst, but I think you were referring to your Hot Shot stuff. Is that right, Herschel?
Yeah, I don't know where 10 come from. 25 gallon, correct. Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know where 10 come from. But the Flashpoint is 1 ounce for 15 gallon. Is that right?
If you mix
Yes.
it on the lower side, yes. Now you can double up on that too, though, to get the full 7 points of cetane, which is why I personally do. So it's 2 ounces per 15, and that makes a huge difference in my diesel pickup.
Really?
Yes, like literally night and day.
Well, I guess if I had one wish list for that product, it would have been the same dosage as the Catalyst, just for simplicity.
We're working on it. That's definitely been brought up to our attention. We're working on it.
Herschel, we
Hey,
can't
Bruce.
keep everything. That's simple now. Sometimes we do have
Hey.
to think.
Well, I know.
Go
You
ahead.
seen what happened when I tried to, and I ended up with 10. I don't even know where that come from.
Well, look, I forgot the word kingpin today. I mean, I've had kingpin on my mind since 1969, and it slipped my mind. But my
Hey,
buddy
Bruce, do you
Rob from
happen to-
LKQ in Easton, Maryland, he sends me texts when I forget, so he watches over me.
Bruce, do you happen
Herschel,
to have
it's just
your...
part of it. It's just part of age, you know.
Yeah, I know.
We fight it, but it happens.
Do you happen to have your calculator up that tells you ratios and transmission and RPMs? Do you happen to have that up?
Well, go ahead. You ask the question. I'll see if I can answer it first.
Okay, this is a 02, so it's a DDEC 4, Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
10-speed Eaton Fuller, so it's about got to be a 0.73.
So did you say 10 speed?
10-speed Eaton Fuller, so it about has to be a 0.73.
Right.
On the rear end, by VIN number, I can't find the data tag. I haven't been able to find it yet. But on the rear end, by the VIN number, manufacturer tells me it's a 3.70 axle. And the
What
tire
size tire?
size 11R225. What RPM would you expect at 55 miles an hour in 10th gear by the calculator? Or at 60, whichever you could, you know.
Leroy, you have that calculator handy?
Yeah, I'll pull it up here.
Yeah, I can take a look too. Hey, Herschel, while we're figuring this out, I wanted to let you
Yes, sir.
know we now offer the Flashpoint in a 5-gallon pail, and we're also going to run a special promotional right now. If you buy a 5-gallon pail of Flashpoint and 3 gallons of Catalyst, it is going to be $9.75 for everything. And you also get 2 free 16-ounce bottles. So it would be a perfect ratio because it is a 5-to-3 ratio on the mixing. So now you'll have exactly enough solutions to make the exact same amount. You won't have any left over. So I'm gonna run that sale now and see how it goes. But it's $9.75 for a total of 8 gallons of catalyst and the flash point.
I
So
appreciate
you were looking
the
for
sale.
speed.
Go ahead.
You were looking for the speed, Herschel. You said at like 60 or the RPM.
Yeah,
RPM
60,
at 55.
whichever. Yeah.
RPM.
Didn't you say 55?
Yeah, 55 is fine.
55 in 10th gear. Now, is that a tall 22.5 or a low pro 22.5?
11R 22.5.
Yeah, is that the tall one or the low pro?
That's the
That's
tall
a
one.
tall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
That's the tall one.
41.4 tire diameter. You said 355 gears?
370.
370.
370.
370.
You said 1250 RPM, Leroy. And what was your gear ratio in your overdrive? Was it 0.72?
7.3.
I'm going to guess 0.73 because it's a 10-speed
Yeah.
Eaton Fuller overdrive.
Okay, mine came out to 57.02 mile per hour.
At what
57
RPM?
miles an hour.
1250 RPM.
Okay, there's something's not right. I'm not getting the correct information with this thing.
Okay. Let me give you
Something's
some
wrong.
speeds. Let me give you some speeds off a new Walmart truck, 247s. 247 low pro 22.5 direct gear. At 55, it's 1200. At 60 mile an hour, it's 1280. At 65, it's 1375.
Have you ever heard of a tachometer just being wrong? And the reason I say is I told you the ratios and all that good stuff. In 55 miles an hour, 10th gear with the 370s, the 11R 22.5 tire, a D-Deck 4, it's about gotta be because it's an 02. I'm showing 1500 on the tack. I just don't believe that. It doesn't sound like 1500. It doesn't sound like 1500 either.
Hey, real quick. Hey, Herschel, back in 1989 when I bought my first Dodge Cummins pickup, I put a mechanical tack in it. And I didn't think the RPM was right. Now, this ran off a cable. I bought 2 other tacks. So I had 3 tachometers. I had 3 different RPMs.
Oh, wow. Just average them.
That's what I did.
So,
I gave up. I wasn't buying any more tachometers. So.
So, Leroy, since I am a remote tuner and I have your laptop, what if I plugged in the laptop and got a hold of you? Can you watch it with the laptop and maybe get a better guess on what the true RPM is while driving? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'll do that. I just got to remember to take the computer with me and give you a call. Okay.
Yeah, everything's possible, Herschel, with that.
The only hang up would be is if your speedometer is actually driven by the same speed sensor that the ECM is. Sometimes in those older things, the speedometer has its own speed sensor and the ECM has a different one. So if that's the case,
well,
then
the speedometer and the GPS agree on the miles per hour. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, then we can get it all lined up. That's no big.
Okay.
Gosh, Herschel, I was going to tell you, go out on the Ohio Turnpike, set the cruise at 60 and use your stopwatch from mile marker to mile marker. It should be 60 seconds.
Now, see, Bruce, that's why you have to stay around. I forgot all about that one. I know that trick. I forgot it.
So here's the trick. Try to do it in a car at 120 and see if it's 30 seconds.
I don't know if my brain can think fast enough to 120 and stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Sure it can. When I was younger, and if I'm going out across Utah and places like that when there's no traffic, I try to do a mile in 45 seconds.
Woo!
There you go.
Oh, Bruce, there's never been any grass growing underneath of your tires.
All right. Good
Hey, I
stuff.
just put
All
new
right, guys.
tires on my 2014 half-ton pickup in Florida because we were at 11 years old on the tires, 47,000 miles. I figured I better change them.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
no cracks, no drywall cracks.
You know, it's kind of like what we talked about. All of these materials are getting so much better. They just don't wear out the way they used to. And tires are another one. You know, on truck tires, and even on my coach, I would go with the 5-year rule. I'm not doing that anymore. I've got tires that are 6 years old right now, and they look like new. I used to be kind of a fanatic about that, but at some point, you just have to face the reality. At 5 years old, there's nothing wrong with these tires anymore. Even if and my coat's outside, I don't put wheel covers on it, and those tires just really, really hold up well now. Let's go to Texas. Steve, welcome.
Hey, a couple questions. So let me get the first one, drive line question, then I got a tune question. 7 Freightliner Cascade, DD15, 12-speed automated transmission. I've got a driveline vibration I cannot find. I've replaced many parts. Still hasn't changed. Including carrier bearing, checked the U-joints, all that, tires, everything else, tie rod ends, alignment, all this kind of thing. But it is in the driveline. Promise you it's in the driveline. I can take off with a heavy load going up a hill, pulling hard, and at like 9-10 mile an hour, I'm feeling the vibration in the driveline. And it doesn't matter what I do.
Have you put a new damper on the front of the crank?
I haven't. I wouldn't think you would feel it that strong with a dampener.
Oh, but you will.
I mean, I'm sure.
How many miles are on it? How many miles are on it?
And another 1,000 miles, I'll hit 700.
Don't spend any more money. Just change the damper.
Okay, well, I mean, I can do this one on this one, I believe, without pulling the radiator. I'm pretty sure I can pull it off without that.
I think you can too.
Yeah. So I mean,
you've spent so much. You've spent so much money. You could have had 2 dampers on that truck.
Well, the carrier bearing was bad. It was bad, and it was a son of a gun to get off. Oh my God, it was hard.
Well, I can tell you, the drive shaft shops will tell you every 100 or every 500,000, you should take this drive shaft out and take it to a shop and have them check it for straightness, balance, and at least replace the carrier bearing. Carrier bearings can feel good and still be bad.
Oh, I took a pry bar and moved the drive shaft up and down inside of it. I could see it moving. And I was like, no, it's bored. So I did that. But it was a lot harder job than it should have been. But everything seems to be that way lately. But my question on the driveline, if I do that and it fixes the problem, great. If not, I have to look elsewhere. But they put a new clutch in this about 50,000 miles before I bought it. Apparently somebody didn't know how to drive it and they burned the clutch up because I've had it for 150,000, almost 200,000 miles now. My question is, they didn't put a rear main seal in it when they put the new clutch in because it's got a rear main seal leaking, which means they didn't replace the damn seal or they put it in bad or whatever. I don't know. But the question is there anything they could have done in that transmission, put the clutch in it, that would cause that driveline vibration?
Yeah. I mean,
if it has a bad clutch disc, does this transmission use a clutch disc?
Yeah, I don't have any idea. Automated, so I mean, I don't know.
If it's automated, I wonder why the clutch went out.
Because probably somebody sitting there riding the brake at the stoplights and burning them up. Who knows? They don't, a lot of people don't have any idea how to drive them. But anyhow, my other question on that driveline was, I need higher gears in this thing. I mean, it's got a 12-speed direct drive and 247 rears, 247 gears.
Yeah.
So this truck is set up to do about 60 miles an hour.
Well, 60 mile an hour. Hold hold on. Are you at 1280 RPM?
At 60 mile an hour, I'm right at 1250 or so. 1250, 1260.
Okay. All right. So at six, what speed do you want to run?
Well, I don't mind running 65 most of the time, but a lot of loads, I've got to run 70 or 75 because I'm on a time frame and I'm running out of time and I got to speed up a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, like right now, I'm running 70 and it's at 14 and a half, almost 15.
Yeah.
You know, and that's hard on this thing because it's not really meant to go that high RPM. You know, I do run the catalyst, which helps, but, you know.
Okay. And your low pro 22.5, I mean, you could make up the difference in the tires, but then you'll lose some fuel efficiency or change the transmission.
Well, and that's my question is if the vibration isn't from the dampener balancer, and that leads me down to, okay, it's in the transmission or it's in the differentials, someplace in one of those two. If I was to change this out and put a 12-speed with an overdrive in, a single overdrive, that would get me down, you know, that would get me up probably another 200 or 300 RPMs lower at that same speed. I'm thinking, my way of thinking, dropping with an overdrive.
You're correct.
Okay. What would I have, if you just put a different transmission, but still stay with the 12-speed automated, but I had an overdrive, do you have to reprogram ECM or anything to do that?
Somebody wait
for
Leroy.
Just read the RPM. Hello?
You there, Leroy?
One more time.
If you go from a direct automated 12-speed to an overdrive automated 12-speed, does he have to do any programming in the ECM?
Yeah, you have to tell the ECM what the final drive is.
Okay, so you have to reprogram to tell it that. And I could do that during a remote tune though, right? Or a tune with you guys.
Correct.
We could do all that at the same time if I went that route. Okay, that brings me to my next question, because I'm thinking about buying if I found a good used transmission, I could swap them out and maybe solve a lot of things going that, and it'd be cheaper. But the other question is on a tune on this, on a DD15, I was all set up to go do a tune a few weeks ago to a remote tuner, and he calls me back and says, well, we can't do a factory tune on that. I'm like, what do you mean? All I want to do is bump it to like 505, because it's at 400 now, bump it to like 505, and that'll bring the torque up as well. And if we can take it out of the economy mode for shift mode and put it in the performance mode, that would be great. But don't have to, but that would be great. And he said, well, we can't do a factory tune on that. All we can do is a custom tune. I'm like, so now I'm not looking at the $800. I'm looking at $2,300, and all I'm doing is bumping horsepower and torque. And is that the case? You guys don't have a factory tune for a DD15?
No, we have a factory tune for one.
Well, that's what the remote tuner told me, that he couldn't do it. That you guys said that you couldn't do a factory tune. That you don't have access to it. You have to do a custom tune.
Who was the tuner? Leroy, you need to call him.
I can email it to you guys because he was out and he talked to JB. It was two initials. Somebody in the shop there.
JR.
JR. And then I talked to JR, and JR told me the same thing. I didn't believe him. I called and talked to JR, which is who he said he talked to. And he said, yeah, we don't have any way to do a factory tune on that. You have to do a custom tune, and it's $2,200 or whatever it is. I'm like, I'm not paying $2,200 just to bump the horsepower and torque is all I'm really looking at doing. And so that's why I was like, well, this sucks. That means I might have to go to Freightliner and see if they can do it. No, I don't know. But so if you guys
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Why did you recently bought this truck? Why did you buy this truck if the horsepower was too low and the speed was too low?
Honestly, I wasn't aware that the RPMs would be that high with the speed. I didn't do the calculations on the gear ratios and the transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my fault for not looking into that further.
Okay.
At the time, I had huge problems out of a PACCAR, and this one was in the shop and just got all the new new one box and everything just put in it.
Yeah.
They just spent like $15,000 on it. And so I'm like, well, there's a big portion of everything done already. And now I put a lot of money into this replacing parts all the time. I do most of the work myself, so I save myself a lot of money. But I have replaced a lot of parts, bringing it up to speed, and it's a good truck. It's a really good truck. The motor's strong as all hell, you know, and it drives down. It's beautiful. Everything else is great.
So I got to tell you,
you're correct.
I got to tell you, we spend hundreds of hours developing tunes. There's a couple $1 million in dynos and emissions testing equipment. There's 3 engineers. They don't work for minimum wage. So everything costs a lot of money. We have a very expensive, very well-equipped facility. It's not like a tuner that's living in Effingham, Illinois, working out of a van and living in a motel room. So things do cost money. And if you want to take that,
Bruce, I understand that.
if you want to take that extra 105 horsepower that gives you 300 foot-pound of torque, I mean, all that has to be developed.
Oh, I understand that. It's no different than the guy with the dent in his car and the guy with the hammer does it one swing and fixes it. And it's not the one swing that fixed it. It's all the knowledge and know-how of where to hit it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. Not a problem. But I will call you guys and see if I can set it up with the remote tuner and see if we can do that or whatnot.
Now, in this vibration, can you get it into the shop and we'll put it on the dyno and put the scope on it? But first, I want you to change the torsional damper. And then I want you to call us back on the show and tell us if that fixed your vibration.
Okay. Within the next 30 days, when it's time to do a service, I got to pull the oil pan off anyway. I need to replace all the O-rings on the pickup tubes because they're getting dry rotted, so I'm losing oil pressure at low idle. So I'm going to pull the oil pan off and replace those and put a new oil pump on it while I'm there. Because why not? You're already there. Pretty simple. Once I do that, I'll do the dampener same time. So I will call you after I get all that done, then we'll set it up for it too. Thanks, guys.
All right.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Let's go to Pennsylvania. It's going to be our last call of the day. Wade, welcome.
Hey, Kevin, I was off the live stream for a little bit there looking out to you. Mentioned that news story. Did you touch any more on that?
I haven't. Lisa sent me something and she thought it was kind of an overhyped headline that Kamala didn't physically collapse, that her campaign is collapsing. I swear the way they write these headlines today
metaphorical.
And you should have seen it was all in caps, emergency. Like, come on, really? Can we stop?
Was it Benny Johnson that you saw?
It was. Yeah, that's exactly who it was.
Yeah. I went on his live stream. I'm like, oh, he's got to be talking about it. And
Right.
he didn't see, he was joking and laughing around. And he mentioned the word collapse, and he was referring to her campaign as pulling out of certain states already. And, ABC, I guess it was, just announced that Trump's pretty much ahead in all the swing states to the point where it's going to be tough for her, and she's starting to pull out. So I thought, well, what a joke. But he does, apparently he does have a press conference that he's an hour late for, but it was supposed to be, from what I can read online, it's about, addressing the rhetoric from Madison Square Garden. I guess he's facing a lot of criticism. Nothing new there, but
right, big deal. We're down to the last weeks. Everybody's kind of on edge. What's going to happen? When I see a headline like that, the word emergency was in all caps, and then the word collapsed was in all caps, and I'm like, well, that could be a big story. It's just more hype. This is the kind of stuff you deal with when you scroll headlines. You gotta be careful, especially this week. There's going to be all kinds of crazy stuff. One thing I'm not sure what do they mean when they say she's pulling out? Is she just not going to do event in those states? What does that even mean?
I'm not sure. Did have events scheduled and she's canceling those to do more events in some of the other swing states. I'm not sure what he was. I didn't stay on it very long once I figured it out that it was just a metaphorical.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not completely sold yet, but I'm getting pretty hopeful here. I did just put in this morning my PTO day for the 20th to plan on going down for inauguration. So
Well, there you go.
Hope to see some good people there.
Yeah.
Bruce, are we going to see you there?
No,
No.
no. It's January. I'll be in either Florida or Colorado.
Either in the
So-
sunshine or the snow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wait. What area
Anyway.
do you live, Bruce, in Colorado?
Colorado, I live up by Kremling, Colorado. I'm 26 miles north of Interstate 70 off at exit 205, right at the bottom of the Eisenhower Tunnel whenever you're heading west.
Okay. How far would you be from, say, Idaho Springs? We were just in Idaho Springs last week.
Idaho Springs, I'm roughly 45 minutes away.
Okay.
Good
Yeah, we're
restaurant
from
there
PA,
that
but
serves buffalo.
we were out in Georgetown and did the train ride around the valley there. And
No,
a
I
bunch of
did
other
that.
stuff in Denver.
I did that in '92. I did that train ride. Yeah.
We went and saw an excellent concert at the Red Rock. That was our reason for going out, but it was a good time. Beautiful
Kevin
country
and
out
I
there.
ate
Nothing like PA.
Kevin took me to a restaurant near there. We never heard a concert, but he made me eat rattlesnake.
That was the Fort. That was the Fort there on.
That was
the restaurant's called the Fort. It's on the bypass around the city of Denver. It's out on the west side bypass, right there off the interstate. They have all kinds of crazy wild game. I think one night I went there and ate like 8 different animals, like rattlesnake and gazelle and all kinds of weird stuff. But that was a good restaurant. I like that place.
It was.
I
a good
thought
exercise is to go to that amphitheater and start at the stage and run up to the top and just run up and down those steps. That's
Bruce,
good exercise.
We were out last
Bruce,
year on a road trip, and I went about halfway up and had to stop.
All you have to do is just park and walk to your seat, and it's a good workout. Lisa and I saw a ton of concerts. You know the road that the entrance to the amphitheater is on. If you just follow that road up the mountain, we lived right on that road. We were just a couple miles up the hill from that place. Absolutely, hands down, the best place I've ever watched a concert is Red Rocks.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was a good experience.
Beautiful
It had like not quite a full moon, 3/4 full moon rose right above the stage.
Yeah.
Right after it started, it was awesome.
That is cool. You can see
I've
the
never
lights.
done it.
You can see the lights of Denver. As it starts to get dark. The scenery is just spectacular, and the sound is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have to put that on the wish list now.
That's worth going and
All
experiencing.
right, you guys
at
have a
least
good
one time.
afternoon here.
All right, Wade. Thanks for the call. All right, we're going to wrap it up today. Anybody with any final words?
I just that politicians, whenever they speak, they had to speak the truth, because this stuff that saying that I just got it in the mail today. Kamala will only expand on Social Security, and she said that Trump's going to take away from Social Security. I know Trump would never do that.
Of course not.
And the list just goes on and on. By the way, the first president that took away from Social Security was Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Bruce,
So,
it gets worse than that.
And-
Today, the mainstream media right now, they are actually talking about the fact that if Trump gets elected, he will be putting people in internment camps. They're talking about that on mainstream media right now as though it's a real thing. How ridiculous!
How can these people with all their educations be that stupid?
They're not. They're evil.
That's and plus he has a history. He had a 4-year history. He didn't do stupid things like that.
Of course, he never even talked about them. These people aren't stupid. I swear they have to be evil. It's the only explanation I have. All right, so we will see you again here for the Power Hour next week. Thanks to the team from Pittsburgh Power as always. you have any other questions, give them a call. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Destination Health. I have a returning guest. She was just on recently. We're getting her back. She was very popular, Tracy Strope. We'll be talking to her tomorrow. Bruce, you might be interested in the next Monday show. We're trying to pull together. I've had some really great people on my health show recently. Robert Scott Bell. These are people. Some of these people from that event were January 6th prisoners. They spent time in federal prison over January 6th. 3 of them are on the disinformation dozen over the whole vaccine issue. We're trying to get 5 of us together for Monday and do kind of a political health show the day before the election, and just kind of have some fun with it. I think we've got Robert Scott Bell is coming back. John Hewlett, the founder of Cardio Miracle, will be on. He's quite the patriot and very, very politically involved. We're trying to get Casey and Callie Means back. We haven't had Callie Means on the show before. We had Casey, but they are so busy. I mean, they're doing podcasts with Joe Rogan and doing events with Trump. So we're trying to get them on. Lisa sending a message, maybe. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we were hoping to get Ben Tapper on. Ben's been on the show a lot. He's one of the disinformation dozen. Lisa just told me he can't make it. Looks like we'll have Lori Martin Gregory back.
Joe Rogan. I recently watched an interview with him and Trump. It was almost 2 hours, and what a great interview that was with Joe Rogan.
Almost 3. It was 3 hours. That was a long, free-form interview with no breaks. Although, they're making a big deal about that this was 3 hours, no breaks. That's what we do every day here.
Yeah.
We do that every day.
Well, if I disappear from the phone and you call for me, I'm taking a break.
That's right. Yeah. But it was really interesting because it wasn't an interview. It wasn't scripted. Rogan had some questions he wanted him to answer, and Trump answered them. And then it was just really fun to watch those two talk. It was just a wide open conversation. They'd go off on tangents, and they talked about some really crazy stuff, but it was entertaining. You know what I just saw?
I liked when he talks about Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no doubt. So
when Trump talks about Elon,
Rogan's been trying to.
All right, so let's just say this: if Trump becomes our president and the Democrats stay the hell off his back, and Elon's in there working with him, oh my God, can you imagine what could happen? How great this country could be with Elon's thoughts.
Well, think about. And I don't know if you realize this. I didn't understand this. There's a lot I've learned about our political system in just the last couple of years because all these weird things keep coming up. I didn't understand the way the president's transition team works. So it seems to be, from what I'm gathering now, that once the president is decided, then they start to put together the transition team, but it's not necessarily the president that gets to pick that, and the government pays that team. Well, I don't know if this has ever happened before, but from what I gather right now, Trump already has his transition team put together, and he's paying them himself. He doesn't want the government to be a part of the transition team. He wanted to pick his own. He's already put them together, and he's already paying them. And it's Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. That's a pretty impressive lineup.
He's got 3 Democrats on there.
That's what I mean.
Plus, he was a Democrat.
Lifelong.
He was a Democrat,
right.
So that's 4.
Right. Yeah, it's really crazy. The way that's happening now, Joe Rogan is still trying to get Kamala to sit down and do the same kind of interview. Can you imagine how? I would.
Yeah, she can't.
That.
She actually can't do that. She doesn't have the sense to do that. All
And-
she is going to be is a puppet. She can't make a decision.
Well, here's Rogan just announced today that the reason it hasn't happened yet is her campaign responded and said, we will do 1 hour, but you have to come to us. And Joe Rogan said, no. It's pretty interesting that that somebody like a Joe Rogan actually, in this case, has more power than the sitting vice president. She needs him more than he needs her. So he's saying, no, you come to Austin, you do a 3-hour sit down or however long. But she's saying, now, if you want to do it, it's going to be an hour and you have to come to us. But I'll tell you who just did accept. And you want to watch this one. This one will be really good. JD Vance going to be on Joe Rogan's show this week, just announced.
And when is that show?
You know, the way he does it, he doesn't have a scheduled show. He will sit down with JD Vance at whatever time they work out together. And then usually, I mean, he released the Trump interview really quick. Usually they work on the show for a couple days or whatever and, you know, kind of clean it up and put it together and then release it. They released the Trump interview really quick. So I imagine they'll do the same thing. I don't know that they've announced the day yet that they're going to record it, but my guess is they'll get, once they record it, they'll get it out within 24 hours, I'll bet.
So people that are not going to vote for Trump, they should really listen to that 3-hour
Absolutely.
show. They should listen to that and see, you'll really get to see what the man is all about.
Right. Right. And you know what? You can't fake that kind of stuff. You can, and that's why
No,
Kamala
it's
can't
not
do it.
fake.
You can't fake yourself through 3 hours. And you know, Joe Rogan is a really good interviewer. I was really interested to see how he was going to handle this. Was he going to try to be really tough and, you know, force Trump to answer certain questions? And would he follow up? I think he did a really good job of balancing it. He did ask Trump hard questions. He followed up on them. Trump was just as cool as a cucumber. I mean, even with you know, Rogan criticized him about a couple things, asked him some pretty hard questions, but it went really well. And you can't fake that for 3 hours. I mean, if you're phony, by the end of that 3 hours, everybody's going to know you're phony.
That's correct.
So
we can't fake this show for 3 hours either.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. I'm really interested in JD Vance. I have watched him with some really contentious interviews like CNN. He will go on any show and talk to anybody. And he is so good at just staying calm, answering questions, and he knows the stuff inside and out. When they try to, you know, trip him up and say, oh, no, but what about it? He has the facts and he knows right off the top of his head. And he has done some really good interviews. So I think it'll be really interesting to watch him with Rogan.
Yeah, interesting.
He's a sharp guy.
Okay.
We're going to wrap this up. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.